Anthropology. We are here to speak today about home cultures with Victor Buchli, which is a professor from University College London. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well.
We are very glad to have you here. I used to say that homes are made of stories. Good stories, bad stories, little stories. We used to speak all the time in our home about our life, what happened to us, what happened in the work, anecdotes of the street. Everything is made at home. But we don't used to speak so much about home in anthropology, which is also our home. So today we want to make anthropology a little more homey. And so it's a splendid opportunity to have you here to address this so important topic in our daily lives, but not normally so important in anthropology, don't you think?
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here indeed, and thank you for the kind invitation. But you are quite right about the status of the home in anthropology. We established a journal about 10 years ago called Home Cultures, which was basically to find a home for these kinds of inquiries within anthropology, but also not just simply anthropology, but more widely. So Home Cultures is very much an interdisciplinary journal and attempts to bring together various disciplinary approaches to the home in one home. So one can begin to compare. But within anthropology itself, as you mentioned, it is true that home is actually relatively overlooked in many respects. But this is a bit paradoxical in many ways because, frankly, when anyone does research, when anyone does ethnographic fieldwork, you find that the best moment in your fieldwork is when you are invited into someone's home. The moment your informants invite you home is precisely the moment that you've established yourself with a certain degree of intimacy with your informants. And at that moment, you also have become socialized within that particular society, within that community. So really, it's at the home that basically the key work of anthropology, I would say, gets done. And that's regardless of whether or not you think of the home as the object of your study. You may be wanting to think about religious ritual. You may be wanting to think about larger political economy or maybe some aspects of language and the like. But usually, the moment you are invited into the home is when you're actually able to do that work properly, when, in a sense, you have the trust of your informants and you've been admitted into that society. So really, the home is the first point of entry for anyone in any social situation, regardless of where they are in the world. And so for that reason, analytically, it's very, very important to our discipline, even though it might have been a bit underaddressed as an analytical context in and of itself for anthropology.
And is the foreign home, the exotic home, the topic here, or we have also the modern home, the postmodern home, the fashion home inside the journal? How is the line to address the topic?
Well, in this case, the journal actually probably has fewer submissions in relation to so-called exotic homes in that sense. In that sense, it's probably less traditionally anthropological in that sense, in that the homes that are being addressed are probably urban homes in large cities or in suburbs and the like of major metropolitan areas in the world. So that traditional focus, say, on the rural home, it is probably a bit downplayed. Not intentionally. It's just really a question of where the work is being done and how it is being brought together in the journal. So in that respect, the more traditional focus, say, within sort of folkloric studies and the like on rural homes or peasant homes and the like is given way to the study of essentially metropolitan homes of various sorts over the world.
So a point in doing this, obviously, is diversity as a traditional theme in anthropology, that you discover that the others live in completely different ways that you could imagine even. But I guess that there are more essential topics here in home, more bone, analytically speaking. For you, what is the importance of addressing this issue in these spaces?
Well, for me, I have to say, as editor for such a journal, I particularly want to interrogate the category of home, to basically try to make, as they used to say, making the familiar strange, the notion of Entfremdung or Astranение, making the familiar strange. And in this respect, the home is oftentimes taken for granted because it's part of daily life. We all feel we understand it.
It is the place of taking for granted.
Yes.
Nobody questions about his own or her own home.
Indeed.
It's like the evidence of every day.
This is very true. And as homes, in a sense, may appear to be more similar in a globalizing world, where you have suburban communities in China that look just like suburban communities in England, which look just like suburban communities in California or suburban communities in Venezuela. One assumes that somehow we are dealing with the same thing, but we're not. The nuances are very important, and one has to address them very critically and very analytically, because we can miss what is important if we don't actually do very careful, detailed work and also have a comparative framework within which to understand the nuances in place that are responsible for key differences in the way the home emerges.
What kind of details or nuances are important or are you thinking of?
I think in this respect, there are details and nuances, say, to aspects of housekeeping, for instance, how we think about cleanliness, who does what, when, and where within the home in relation to homemaking, how this links up to other orders socially within a given society. Similarly, photographs of the family are very different, even though the technologies are very much the same. The platforms are the same. We use the same digital cameras. We use the same computer screens. We avail ourselves of the same printing processes. We may even have the same photo frames. But these things work in very different and distinctive ways that serve the particular cultural needs of a particular society in any one given place.
But this is a funny paradox, that the things that we could think of as insignificant, these insignificances are the sources of meaning.
Yes.
And the significant things in terms of making home.
No, indeed. I mean, even so much how, in a sense, hot water is provided, how, in a sense, insulation within homes work, how homes are connected to wider infrastructures within the city. And those infrastructures are all implicated within larger order structures in society, in terms of politics, in terms of urbanism, and also in terms of wider political histories of individual societies. So they're all interlinked in very nuanced yet subtle ways. And it's really only when we think of those differences as they emerge within daily life, then we can become aware of these deep histories and these profound social and political distinctions that otherwise are hidden behind very, very similar images, similar forms, similar understandings of home and the interior.
You know, this sounds so serious, in a way a little frightening. But I guess that the point in studying home also is affects this conundrum or this melange of activities people, objects, and affects, emotions.
Yes. Affect, of course, is extremely important too, because what we think of as the very, very intimate, very emotional, very authentic, and affective aspects of home, of course, have a wider political economy in which they are worked out. So it's important to understand the connection between these deep intimacies and affects that we consider to be inalienable and authentic, and how they relate to higher orders socially in this respect. Because to a certain degree, I believe, partly as an archaeologist, partly as an anthropologist, that usually when we encounter radical changes in society, we are left surprised. We don't understand how something could have changed so quickly. I'm a student of the former Soviet Union. We did not see the collapse of the former Soviet Union coming. But if we had an understanding of what the intimacies were at the daily level of the home, we could probably understand the way in which certain societies can suddenly come undone, and come undone extremely quickly, rather than sort of focusing on higher order scales that we're typically used to addressing, say, within political science or within economics.
Yes, because normally we have thought more in terms of concepts and ideas and models taken from the public realm. So in a way, studying home could be also something of a revolutionary thing. I mean, in terms of, there is a domestic epistemology involved. I mean, in seeing the world from your bed, like Georges Perec.
Yes, indeed.
He write this Voyage au fond de la lit.
Yes, exactly. The bed, the view from the bed is extremely important. And you mentioned revolution, or maybe a potentially sort of revolutionary sort of epistemology. But actually, most revolutionary epistemologies historically have always paid a great deal of attention to the home. I know this as a student of the former Soviet Union, that one of the first things Bolshevik revolutionaries were thinking about was how to change things in the home. If things did not change in the home, then the socialist revolution would not be successful in the eyes of the early socialist state. So revolutionary thinkers, particularly from a Marxian tradition, have always been very, very, very conscious about the home and its importance for wider order social change.
Although they didn't used to be the ones who made the coffee or the food at home. They were not the thinkers in the kitchen.
This is true. They may not have been the ones that are doing the work in the kitchen, but they were very influential in terms of how one understood the importance of the kitchen and how, in a sense, one wanted to restructure it in order to create a new kind of society. Probably one of the big problems is usually policymakers and thinkers, philosophers and theoreticians and anthropologists did not have a deep, intimate understanding of the workings of the home. If they had, then I think the sorts of interventions that they might have wanted to make would have had very different effects.
Definitely. Although, on the other hand, I think that something which is shocking when you study domestic life and intimacies is also the role of continuities of social memories. And in a way, life is very conservative at home.
Yeah. Yes, the way in which history and continuity works, the subtle means in which those sorts of deep structures continue to function in everyday life and then begin to inform social and political life can't actually really be understood except with a fine focus on the nuances of the home in order to understand how those deep structures work and how they function.
This is a wonderful definition that one of my informants in Montevideo gave us. She said, life is not repeating, it's redoing. Every time you repeat in your home, you're not doing just the same,
Yes.
but something anew, doing anew. Well, this is a conversation to begin with and to invite our listeners for your journal, for the reading on home and home cultures. Thank you very much, Victor. It has been very stimulating.
Thank you, Paco, very much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.